Hiya, I'm Jen from Lunar Spirit Wellbeing, and we are here with Amy Washington for Mental Health Awareness Week. So Amy's kindly come on and is going to share her experiences with mental health. So hello, Amy, how are you doing?
I'm good, Han. How are you?
Yes, very well, very well. Thank you for
Good.
agreeing to come on and share your experience with me and to raise
It's fine.
awareness for mental health. So,
Not a problem.
just tell me a little bit about yourself and your experiences with mental health.
Okay, well, I'm Amy. I'm 38. To be honest, I've had mental health issues the whole of my life. Firstly, upbringing wasn't the best. I had an alcoholic mum, and I've not really spoken about that much, but I'm happy to do that now. So, in regards to mental health, I've always had some form of obstacle in my way, which I'm sure a lot of us do. But then I lost my sister in 2003, unexpectedly. So that was a big shock. And that was detrimental again to my mental health. And then in 2005, on the 7th of July, when the bombings went off in London, I was actually on the King's Cross tube, on the fourth carriage, where the bomb was in the first carriage. So I was actually on the tube. So again, something else to add to my load. Through that, though, I got PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And at that time, obviously, when it happened and the weeks after, I didn't have a clue what was going on with myself. I had flashbacks. I was having bad dreams. I didn't want to go out of my house. The sight of blood even would get me. The sirens, for instance, I'd hear sirens outside my house. I didn't know what was going on with me, because obviously at the time, you just think you'll go back to normal after a couple of weeks, and that didn't happen for me. I was diagnosed with PTSD in the September, October time. And that was a long process. Obviously, you can imagine that the 7th of July, and then going through all of the emotional, what PTSD does to you. And obviously, because you associate that, well, I did at the time, with war soldiers or someone that had seen a traumatic event. And obviously I knew I'd been in a traumatic event, but I didn't know the signs or the symptoms or anything like that. So basically I was signed off work for 6 to 8 months. And in that time I had cognitive behavioral therapy that was provided by the government. And so I basically saw my therapist once a week. And in that, funnily enough, I just started to talk about my sister first.
Okay.
Obviously, because I think I hadn't dealt with my sister's death. And so that was at the forefront of my mind. And in my mind, I felt guilty. I was like, oh my gosh, my mum and dad and my family might have lost another child, and then I felt guilt that I didn't die, and there was other people that had died and I wasn't, and I felt guilty for being alive, basically. So my association at the beginning of those initial sessions were with my sister, because I hadn't dealt with her. Once I dealt with that, I then could move on to what happened on the 7th of July. And it took about weekly sessions, I'd say 3 months. So I was going every week to see my therapist. It was all recorded via tapes, etc. So cassette tapes back in those days. Well, not in those days. Was it cassettes or CDs? I can't remember. But basically, I had to listen to them. And one thing I regret the whole experience was I didn't actually listen to them. And I think the reason they ask you to listen to it is because they want you to relive the experience. And that is what cognitive behavioral therapy is. It's about reliving the experience. It's about going through the emotions so you can then come out the other end and obviously deal with those emotions, which I did. It took a long time, obviously, but I couldn't recommend it high enough, depending on what obviously symptoms you have, etc. But for me, it helped me. It made me see that me getting on a tube and standing in the position that I was, if I did it again, it's not going to happen again. Do you understand? So they tell
you travel now via. Are you able to go on the underground? Are you able?
I can, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
considering it was it's 2005 and now we're in 2020, it took me a good year, but what I loved about my therapist, he actually took me on the tube.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, he actually took me on the tube and he said, look, see, you're going to be sat down now, you're not going to be standing up. And you know, it's reliving, basically. It's reliving all the emotions that you went through on the day, and then obviously reliving and then obviously practicing how you can cope after the fact. Do you know what I mean? So not associating, say, a siren with what happened on the 7th of July. It's actually just a siren, it's outside, and it's not going to affect me. Do you know what I mean? So it was really good in that respect. And then so I had that, and then I had that for about 6 to 8 months altogether. And then I moved to Australia in 2006 and I was there for 9 years. But I hadn't dealt with my mum. So I was still, not right. Do you understand what I mean? In that respect, I've always suffered with depression. I've always been not negative, but I've always gone back to how I felt. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So did your depression symptoms come out when you were in Australia again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not so much at the beginning, but then obviously when I had children, that was a big thing for me. And I got postnatal depression with that. So, so then I had to deal with all of that again. I had to deal with postnatal depression. I had to deal with depression. I had to just deal with it. And having 2 children was just even harder.
Yeah.
And by that point, I had to come back to the UK because we couldn't really cope out there, to be honest with you. We had twins. There was only us 2, me and my ex-partner. And so we came back, and at that point we finished. So I was on my own. I'd come back to a country that I had 2 children. I had no money, no just the clothes in my suitcase with the girls, had no car, had no job, had no house.
Wow. Gosh.
So then obviously I then moved in with my sister, and I just lost it. I lost my way. Like, I had a traumatic birth with the girls. I was put out under general anaesthetic, so I didn't see them be born. So that was massive to me, as in I didn't bond with them. And because obviously I think because of the postnatal depression, I couldn't bond with them. Everything, and because there was 2 of them, I had to do everything the same. Sleep was non-existent. It was hard work, basically. So when I came over here, it was easier but harder because obviously I didn't have the support of my ex. I mean, obviously he was there for them, but do you know what I mean? Not for me. I didn't have. Yeah, exactly. But since I've been here 4.5 years, I've got myself a house, not rented, by the way. I've learned to become a personal trainer. So I've taken myself back to college. I became a level 1 England boxing coach. Wow. And exercise to me got me out of a really low point. And so that's why I became a personal trainer, because I wanted to give back to people that may have felt that they couldn't do exercise, or they were lacking the exercise, or they just felt, crap within themselves. I wanted to be that person that was able to give them something back and help them, if that makes sense, because it helped me.
Absolutely, yeah. I find physical exercise helps with my mental well-being no end.
100%.
So what steps did you take then to get help and recover from the postnatal depression?
Well, to be honest, I didn't really do much. I went to the doctors. I was prescribed antidepressants, and I'm happy to say that I still am on them. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone has different views about antidepressants, but I've chosen to take them. But also, the last couple of months, and also realizing yourself that you are not that you're not right, but you're not moving forward in your life. And I knew that as much as I was doing, like, I'd become a personal trainer, I became a level 1 England boxing coach, I still wasn't mentally correct. Like, I was enjoying life, but I still had that niggling feeling that something wasn't allowing me to progress further. So I basically got myself therapy sessions, and I'm still having them, and it's one of the best things I ever did. I'm a talker. I didn't used to be a talker, but I am a talker. I will tell people if there's something. I'm not that type of person that will hold things in, and I know a lot of people are, so I'm not judging anyone or not, but for me personally, I am a talker. I will tell anybody, to be fair. If I have that connection, I can talk. Do you know what I mean? But this, having therapy now, has just opened my eyes completely. I've dealt with my childhood, which I think is very important. If you feel that you haven't had the best upbringing, or you feel that there is something there that you haven't quite dealt with, and it's hard for people, you don't realize, I personally think you are made up by how you're brought up. So if you're not, so if you're not, if you feel that you've had an unstable upbringing, then, you know, my advice is to go and seek advice, because you don't realize that your habits are created from when you were younger, and you don't realize, because you're brought up, you just think they're normal. And
exactly, we have our conditioning from our generational conditioning that our parents have had from our grandparents, and then our parents pass it on to us, and often that our beliefs aren't the same as our parents. And
no, they're not.
We go on in life, and we then come to explore their limiting beliefs and what we've picked up during our childhood and our adolescent years.
100%. And that's the big thing. And I think I've forgiven my mum, and I not feel sorry for her, but I understand why she chose drink, because in those days when they were growing up, or when in their generation, they didn't have, I feel personally, they didn't feel comfortable in talking to others. They weren't allowed to talk to others. My mum was brought up, right, you're the backbone of our family. So then when she had us, she felt that she had to be the backbone, and felt that she had to be the strong one. And then I feel that drink was her only release, and then it just became a habit, and she turned into alcoholic, basically.
That is quite a common thing that I've seen, is when people internalize their thoughts and feelings. You know, we all need to be able to get those, and then what we're doing is with them with, you know, substances,
Exactly.
which then has detrimental results to the rest of the family.
Yeah,
it's difficult, isn't it? But our parents were only doing like the best they can at the time, and then it's up to us to like seek help, isn't it?
Yeah.
As we get older.
100%. And as much as I did blame her for a lot of things, growing up, and even now, like, I was very conscious of how I brought my children up, or how I'm bringing my kids up. And I always used to question myself, and I'd be like, am I doing this right? I'm not going to do it how my mum did it. I'm not going to do that. But I've still got morals and values, and that came from somewhere, which is my mum. And so, you know, as much as she was an alcoholic, she did instill things in me that I am proud of, you know. Yeah, she wasn't there physically, or she wouldn't go to my, like, say, my concerts, or, you know, those kind of things. But from a young age, she has instilled those qualities in me.
In your professional opinion, then, would you advise people what advice would you give people then who are suffering from PTSD or postnatal depression?
Well, I understand that every case is different, every person is different. One thing with PTSD is you don't actually realize you have it, because it's people associate PTSD with, say, soldiers, or, you know, coming back from Afghan, for instance. The slightest trauma could be you could have seen someone hit by a car, or you could have been a witness to a fight. It's even as much as you think that's nothing, if you start to feel that you can't get over that, then there's an issue, and that's where PTSD comes in. And it's post-traumatic stress disorder. To me, it's, I mean, obviously there's triggers, there are emotions, and it's all about that particular trauma that you've seen, or you've physically had. So in that respect, if you do feel that you haven't been able to get over something, or you feel that something is still niggling at you, even though it's been years down the line, like you get flashbacks, or you have bad dreams, or certain noises or smells. Even I couldn't deal with smoke, like even the engines from cars, I couldn't deal with the smell of it, because it just brought me straight back into that moment. Okay. And so if you do feel that, then I would try and seek help, or research about it. There's a lot of it on the websites. I mean, as I'm not much of a reader, and when I had PTSD, so if you have that, sometimes your concentration goes, which it does most of the time. When you're depressed, you can't even read anything. But just what I would say is, if you do feel something, go to a doctor, go to a therapist, speak to a friend. Try not to internalize it, because that is where it will get worse. And you will be surprised, and I'm so surprised, how many people suffer with it. You're not alone. And especially with postnatal depression as well, there's a lot of mums out there that, you know, that you think that they're doing fantastic, they portray that, but underneath they're not. And I was one of those. I was like, yeah, I'm great, and then behind closed doors, be like, oh my God, I cannot cope. I was crying. I was eating rubbish. And then that's just a cycle, isn't it, of you feel rubbish. So I went to the doctors, and he was great. And at first he didn't put me on antidepressants. He gave me he gave me, like, you know, coping mechanisms. He was there to support. But I knew, as being on them before, that was probably one of the best ways to, you know, for me to cope with, especially because I knew I was going back to the UK. And then once I've been here, I'm still on them. I'm not going to lie, I am still on them. But I'm starting to find myself now, since I've had the therapy sessions, that I am ready to come off. I probably won't do it during lockdown, just because, you know, I don't feel I'm confident enough to do it, because you do have to do it gradually. But with the therapy sessions, it's helped me immensely, because I've also dealt with my past when I was younger, and now I'm able to see, wow, the amount of I don't know, clarity, that's the word. I've got clarity now. I'm actually becoming me, and I'm 38, so it's taken a long ass time, you know, to actually know that what I want. Does that make sense? Like, I've known for ages, but you always doubt yourself. Like, you always go, no, I can't do it, because that little voice inside you says,
voice,
no, do it.
So I'm not good enough, I can't do
Yeah.
that. Yeah, we all know that.
But now I'm like, no, I know I'm good enough, and I will do what I'm going to set out to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would just, my advice is just to ask for help. Just, I mean, there's so many, like you, for instance, I'm here. There's so many support groups, and that's another thing, a support group. It's good to connect with people that have been through the same experience with you. And just to touch on that, I'm part of a support group for the 7th of July. And that happened quite quickly. One of the other survivors made a support group, and the amount of people that I've known that I'm still in contact with, because no one, unless you've been through something like that, you can't relate to it.
Yeah, I can't relate to, you know, anything like that, because I've not been there myself.
Yeah.
But I would definitely recommend people talk to people who have been through a similar experience. Mm-hmm. It's about creating that community and that connection, isn't it? And,
yes.
You know, I find that you think that you're alone, you think you're the only one, the person that's feeling like this or experiencing it, especially as being a mum.
Yeah.
You think, oh God, you know, I'm rubbish. why am I not coping? This beautiful baby is here and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
coping. But honestly, you're not alone. I think nearly every mum goes through that at some point in motherhood. And if you don't, you're very lucky. But, you know, the speaking up about it and realizing that you're totally not alone and there's loads of help out there.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit more about what you do professionally then.
Okay, so I'm a personal trainer, qualified to level 3. I'm also a level 1 England boxing coach. I teach classes. And the reason why I got into that, as I said previously, is because exercise to me was a way of coping with my stress. Massive de-stressor. Once I got into it, though, it's very hard to say that when you're not in a good place, and you're like, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. And you never get, but once you get into the rhythm and you do exercise, it makes you, it's something, well, the endorphins kick in, and it's a natural, what's the word, Jen? It's a natural, you said it before.
Antidepressant, isn't it?
That's it. A natural antidepressant. And so that's why I got into, pardon?
Feel good hormones.
That's it. Thanks. Yeah, that's why I got into it, because I wanted to help parents. I wanted to help mothers. And you know what? It's not just women that suffer. It's men as well. So I that's why I got into it, because, and especially the boxing side. I only did one, I was in a white collar boxing match, and I did the training sessions, and that to me was the most de-stressing thing that could ever happen to me, as in going out there, using the pads, using the gloves, just hitting something. I know that's obviously not someone, but just the training in itself was a massive de-stressor for me. So that's why I became a coach, because I thought if I can incorporate that in my personal training sessions, especially for women that do feel like a bit on edge or whatever, that punching feeling of punching a pad is just out of this world. As I'm sure you remember or know.
From that, because I've had a training session with you.
I
admit, I felt absolutely amazing after punching those pads.
You do. And so that's why I got into it, basically, purely because it helped me, and I want to give back to others, really. That's why I did it.
That's amazing.
And it's a passion.
So much. And like, I love these stories of recovery. This is why, you know, I'm doing this and doing these interviews for mental health awareness, is because I want to raise the positivity. I want to spread some positivity, spread some kindness, let people know that they're not alone, and that recovery is 100% possible, and there is life after recovery.
Exactly, there is, and it's a hard road. It's a very hard road, but once you start facing those fears, because they are fears at the end of the day, to understand yourself is the biggest fear, I think. To understand you, because I was that person that wanted to help others, but I never wanted to help myself. I would just shut myself away from myself, and you know, and go and help others. But now I've helped myself, I can help others more.
Yes, exactly.
And it's also for my children as well, because I don't want them to feel any negativity from me, and I felt that they were. Do you know, understand what I'm saying? And also I felt that from my mum. So in that respect, I want them to have the best mental health start as children. And I personally feel if you're not right in your head, then they will feel that, and they will feel that, you know, that void.
That vibe,
that vibe, that's it.
I 100% agree with that. Because we're admitting off our energy, our frequency,
and that's nothing bad with that. That's nothing bad at all. But for me, because I've had it when I was young, I don't want that for my children. Exactly. And it's really hard to actually face your fears and face you as a person, because you know, you think that you've done some, you know, bad things, when in fact they've made me who I am today, you know. Not bad things, but I've lived life, do you know what I mean? And I don't regret it now, whereas I did regret certain things before. But now I'm like, it's human beings, it's natural. You will do things out of the ordinary because at the time you think it's right. Nothing's right, nothing's wrong. If you learn
exactly.
from it.
It just is an experience, isn't it?
Mm,
And it shapes us, whatever we do, it shapes us to who we are today.
exactly.
So yeah, it's learning to forgive yourself and letting go of any guilt and shame, I think.
100%.
And I would definitely like recommend starting off with the relationship with yourself, absolutely, first, because fundamentally that is the most important relationship that we have.
Oh, amazing. And that's the thing, like I didn't have a relationship with myself until and I would say I'm having a relationship myself over the past 6 months, because I'm actually accepting myself for who I am, and I've dealt with my emotions and feelings through my therapy sessions. Because at the time, I'm 38, I've been pushing that away for so many years because it's scary. It's as simple as that.
To face yourself, you know, when I went through my own personal journey through facing myself, it was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Hell, it was horrible to sit with myself, to sit with my emotions and sit with my
Yep.
feelings. Yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted, but to tell you what, it is absolutely 100% worth it.
Yeah. I used to hate being on my own. I'd have to go out. I'd have to go and meet a friend, or I'd have to invite them over. Now I could sit here we have to stay in. So I've been sitting with myself because the girls go to their dad's 2 weeks and then they stay with me. And I'm like, well, I'm going to have to do it now. But it's been the best thing because I actually am loving my own company.
Yeah.
Whereas before I didn't like it at all.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Amy, for coming on and talking to me.
No
and
problems,
helping
darling.
spread awareness for Mental Health Awareness Week.
Definitely. And, you know, I'm here and I'm sure you are as well. And, you know.
Yep. If anyone is suffering, you know, reach out to Amy, reach out to me. Amy works at Studio 281, doing boxing and PT.
I do indeed.
Definitely vouch for Amy myself.
Thanks, darling. I'll pay you later. No, I'm joking. I'm only joking.
All right, my love. Will you take care?
Yeah, and you. Take care. Stay safe.
Okay.
Bye-bye.